Rule 7. Risk of collision. A. Every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions to if determine risk of collision exists. If there is any doubt, such risk shall be deemed to exist. This paragraph saying that we have to use all available means to determine if risk conclusion exists. B. Proper use shall be made of radar equipment if fitted and operational, including long-range scanning to obtain early warning of risk of collision and radar plotting equivalent systematic observation of detected objects. This paragraph is saying that we need to use systematic observation. So, radar plotting, we're talking about taking a series of plots in the radar, and we need to do it systematically and observe it over a period of time in order to determine if risk conclusion exists. C. Assumptions shall not be made on the basis of scanty information, especially scanty radar information. This is going back, we need to take systematic observations, we need to take a series of radar observations. Scanty informations is basically incomplete information, so we can't make assumptions in scanty information. D. In determining if risk of collision exists, the following considerations shall be among those taken into account. First is, such risk shall be deemed to exist if the compass bearing of an approaching vessel does not appreciably change. So, let's watch this video.
What we mean by this is if we put ourselves on the white vessel and we're going to observe the blue vessel, we need to take a bearing of the other vessel. Now we take the bearing as the difference between our heading line and the bearing of the vessel, and we need to continue to monitor that as we approach each other. Clearly in this case, that bearing is not changing. The vessel stays going down that same constant bearing, which means risk of collision exists.
Second is, such risk may sometimes exist even when an appreciable bearing change is evident, particularly when approaching a very large vessel or a tow or approaching a vessel at close range. So, let's watch this video.
We're approaching a significantly larger vessel. Now to take a bearing of it, we need to pick a part of that vessel that we're taking a bearing of. It's too large to just take a bearing of the whole vessel. So in this case, our bearing is going to be of the bow. Now watch what happens as we approach each other. If we're looking down that same bearing line, we're no longer looking at the bow. The bearing of the bow has changed significantly, but that does not mean risk of collision does not exist. If we continue to play the animation, we can see that even though the bearing change was evident, risk of collision still exists. We're approaching a very large vessel. What about a tow? If we go back to the same diagram, but we'll put a tug in front of the vessel. Now we're going to take a bearing of that tug and see what happens when we continue to approach each other. Looking down that same bearing line, we're no longer looking at the tug. The bearing of the tug has changed. But if we continue on, we can see there's still risk of collision. Even though that bearing change is evident, because we're approaching a tow which has a very long length, risk of collision still exists.
And that would be all for today's video about the Rule 7, Risk of Collision.